Welcome to 1,000 Nights and One Night. Today, we continue on with the 18th night. She continued, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the lady ceased not persuading with soft speech the youth to depart with her till he consented and said yes. He slept that night lying at his feet, and hardly knowing where she was for excess of joy. As soon as the next morning dawned, she pursued, addressing the caliph. I arose, and we entered the treasuries, and took thence whatever was light in weight and great in worth. Then we went down side by side from the castle to the city. We were met by the captain and my sisters and slaves, who had been seeking for me. When they saw me, they rejoiced and asked what had stayed me, and I told them all I had seen, and related to them the story of the young prince, and the transformation wherewith the citizens had been justly visited. Hereat all marveled, but when my two sisters, these two bitches, O commander of the faithful, saw me by the side of my young lover, they jealoused me on this account, and were wroth, and plighted mischief against me. We awaited a fair wind, and went on broad, rejoicing and ready to fly for joy by reason of the goods we had gotten. But my own greatest joy was in this youth. And we waited a while, till the wind blew fair for us, and then we set sail and fared forth. Now, as we were talking, my sisters asked me, "And what wilt thou do with this handsome young man?" And I answered, "I propose to make him my husband." Then I turned to him and said, "O my lord, I have had to propose to thee wherein thou must not cross me, and this it is that when we reach Baghdad, my native city, I offer thee my life as thy handmaiden in holy matrimony, and thou shalt be to me baron, and I will be femme to thee." And he answered, "I hear and I obey. Thou art my lady and my mistress, and whatso thou doest I will not gainsay." Then I turned to my sisters and said, "This is my gain. I content me with this youth, and those who have gotten out of my property, let them keep it, as their gain with my good will." "Thou sayest and doest well," answered the twain, "but they imagine mischief against me." We ceased not spooning before a fair wind till we had exchanged the sea of peril for the seas of safety, and in a few days we made Bassora town, whose buildings loomed clear before us as evening fell. But after we had retired to rest and were sound asleep, my two sisters arose and took me up, bed and all, and threw me into the sea. They did the same with the young prince, who, as he could not swim, sank and was drowned, and Allah enrolled him in the noble army of martyrs. As for me, would heaven I had drowned with him, but Allah deemed that I should be of the saved. So when I awoke and found myself in the sea, and saw the ship making off like a flash of lightning, I threw in my way a piece of timber which I bestrided, and the waves tossed me to and fro till they cast me upon an island coast, a high land and an uninhabited land. And I landed, and I walked about the island the rest of the night, and when morning dawned, I saw a rough track barely fit for a child of Adam to tread, leading to me what proved a shallow ford connecting island and mainland. As soon as the sun had risen, I spread my garments to dry in its rays, and ate of the fruits of the island, and drank of its waters. Then I set out along the foot track, and ceased not walking till I reached the mainland. Now, when there remained between me and the city but a 2 hours' journey, behold, a great serpent, the bigness of a date palm, came fleeing towards me in all haste, gliding along now to the right, then to the left, till she was close upon me, whilst her tongue lolled groundward a span long, and swept the dust as she went. She was pursued by a dragon, who was not longer than 2 lances, and of slender build, about the bulk of a spear, and although her terror lent her speed, she kept wriggling from side to side. He overtook her and seized her by the tail, whereat her tears streamed down, and her tongue was thrust out in sheer agony. I took pity on her, and picking up a stone and calling upon Allah for aid, threw it at the dragon's head with such force that he died then and there. And the serpent, opening a pair of wings, flew into the lift and disappeared before my eyes. I sat down marveling over that adventure, but I was weary, and drowsiness overcame me. I slept where I was for a while. When I awoke, I found a jet black damsel sitting at my feet, shampooing them, and by her side stood two black bitches, my sisters, O commander of the faithful. I was ashamed before her, and sitting up asked her, O my sister, who and what art thou? And she answered, How soon hast thou forgotten me? I am she for whom thou wroughtest a good deed, and sowest the seed of gratitude, and slewest her foe. For I am the serpent, whom by Allah's aidance thou didst just deliver from the dragon. I am a jinnah, and he was a jinn who hated me, and none saved my life from him save thou. As soon as thou freest me from him, I flew on the wind to the ship whence thy sisters threw thee, and removed all that was therein to thy house. Then I ordered my attendant Marids to sink the ship, and I transformed thy two sisters into these black bitches. For I know all that thou hast passed down between them and thee. But as for the youth, of a truth he is drowned. So saying, she flew up with me and the bitches, and presently set us down on the terrace roof of my house, wherein I found ready stored of all my property that was on the ship, nor was aught any of it missing. Now, continued the serpent that was, I swear by all engraven on the seal ring of Solomon, with whom be peace, unless thou deal to each of these bitches 300 stripes every day, I will come and imprison thee forever under the earth. And I answered, hearkening and obedience. And away she flew. But before she left, she charged me again, saying, I again swear by him who made the two seas flow, and this be my second oath. If thou gainsay me, I will come and transform thee like thy sisters. Since then I have never failed, O commander of the faithful, to beat them with a number of blows till their blood flows with my tears, I pitying them the while, and well they wot that their being scourged is no fault of mine, and they accepted my excuses. And this is my tale and my history. And the Caliph marveled at her adventure, and then signed to Jafar, who said to the second lady, the portress, And thou, how camest thou to buy the welts and wheals upon thy body? So she began her tale of the portress. Know, O commander of the faithful, that I had a father who, after fulfilling his time, deceased and left me great store of wealth. I remained single for a short time, and presently married one of the richest of his day. I abode with him a year, when he also died, and my share of his property amounted to 80,000 dinars in gold, according to the holy law of inheritance. Thus I became passing rich, and my reputation spread far and wide, for I had me 10 charges of raiment, each worth 1,000 dinars. One day, as I was sitting at home, behold, there came to me in an old woman with lantern jaw, and cheeks suck in, and eyes rucked up, and eyebrows scant and scald, and her head bare and bald, and teeth broken by time and mauled, and back bending, and neck naping, nodding, and face blotched, and rheum running, and hair like a snake, black and white speckled, and complexion in a very fright, even as the saith the poet of the like of her. Ill omened hag, unshriven be her sins, nor mercy visit her on dying bed. Thousand heads strong as he mules would her guiles, despite their bolting lead with spider thread. When the old woman entered, she salaamed to me, and kissing the ground before me, said, I've at home an orphan daughter, and this night are they wedding and her displaying. We be poor folks and strangers in this city, knowing none inhabit it, and we are broken hearted. So do thou earn for thyself a recompense and a reward in heaven by being present at her displaying, and the ladies of this city shall hear that thou art to make active presence, and they also will present themselves. So shalt thou comfort her affliction, for she is sore bruised in spirit, and she hath none to look to save Allah the Most High. Then she wept and kissed my feet. So pity get hold of me and compassion, and I said, hearing is consenting, and please Allah, I will do somewhat more for her, nor shall she be shown in her bridegroom save in my raiment and ornaments and jewelry. At this, the old woman rejoiced and bowed her head to my feet and kissed them, saying, Allah requite thee weal, and comfort thy heart, even as thou hast comforted mine. But, oh, my lady, do not trouble thyself to do me this service at this hour. Be thy ready by supper time, when I will come and fetch thee. So saying, she kissed my hand and went her way. I set about stringing my pearls and donning my brocades and making my toilette, little reckoning what fortune had in womb for me, when suddenly the old woman stood before me, simpering and smiling till she showed every tooth stump, and quoth she, "O my mistress, the city madams have arrived, and when I apprised them that thou promisest to be present, they were glad, and they are now awaiting thee, and looking eagerly for thy coming for the honor of meeting thee." So I threw on my mantilla, and making the old crone walk before me, and my handmaidens behind me, I fared till we came to a street, well watered and swept neat, where the winnowing breeze blew cool and sweet. Here we stopped by a gate arched over with a dome of marble stone firmly seated on solidest foundation, and leading to a palace whose walls from earth rose tall and proud, and whose pinnacle was crowned by the clouds. And over the doorway were writ these couplets: I am the one where mirth shall ever smile, the home of joyance through my lasting while, and amid my court a fountain jetson flows, nor tears nor troubles shall that fount defile. The marge with royal Numians bloom is delight, myrtle, narcissus flower, and chamomile. Arrived at the gate, before which hung a black curtain, the old woman knocked at it, and it was opened unto us. When we entered, we found a vestibule spread with carpets, and hung around the lamps all alight, and wax candles and candelabras, adorned with pennants of precious gems and noble ores. We passed on through this passage till we entered a saloon, whose like for grandeur and beauty is not to be found in this world. It was hung and carpeted with silken stuffs, and was illuminated with branches, sconces, and tapers ranged in double row. An avenue abutting on the upper or noble end of the saloon, where stood a couch of juniper wood, encrusted with pearls and gems, and surmounted by the baldaquin with a mosquito curtains of satins looped up with marguerites. And hardly had we taken note of this, when there came forth from the baldaquin a young lady, and I looked, O commander of the faithful, upon a face and form more perfect than the moon when fullest, with a favor brighter than the dawn, gleaming with saffron hued light, even as the poet sang when he said, Thou pacest the palace of a marvel sight, a bride for Chrysra's or Caesar's night. Wantons the rose on thy roseate cheek, oh, the cheek is the blood of the dragon bright, slim waisted, languorous, sleepy eyed, with charms which promise all love delight, and the tire which attires thy tiara browed is a night of woe on a morn's glad light. The fair young lady came down from the estratude, and said to me, Welcome, and welcome, and good cheer to my sister, the dearly beloved, the illustrious, and 1,000 greetings. Then sat she down and said to me, O my sister, I have a brother who hath sight of thee at sundry wedding feasts and festive seasons. He is a youth handsomer than I, and he hath fallen desperately in love with thee, for that bounteous destiny hath garnered in thee all beauty and perfection. And he hath given silver to this old woman that she might visit thee, and she hath contrived on this wise to foregather us twain. He hath heard that thou art one of the nobles of thy tribe, nor is he aught less in this, and being desirous to ally his lot with thy lot, he hath practised this device to bring me in company with thee. For he is fain to marry thee after the ordinance of Allah and his apostles. And what is lawful and right, there is no shame. When I heard these words and saw myself fairly entrapped in the house, I said, hearing is consenting. She was delighted at this and clapped her hands, whereupon a door opened, and out of it came a young man, blooming in the prime of life, exquisitely dressed, a model of beauty and loveliness and symmetry and perfect grace, with gentle winning manners and eyebrows like a bended bow, and a shaft on cord, and eyes which bewitched all hearts with sorcery lawful in the sight of the Lord. And when I saw and I looked at him, my heart inclined to him, and I loved him. And he sat by my side and talked with me a while, when the young lady again clapped her hands, and behold, a side door opened, and out of it came the Kazi and his 4 assessors as witnesses. And they saluted us, and sitting down, drew up and wrote out the marriage contract between us. And the youth and me and the youth retired. And then he turned to me and said, Be our night blessed, presently adding, O my lady, I have a condition to lay by thee. Quoth I, Oh, my lord, what is it? Whereupon he arose, and fetching a copy of the holy book, presented it to me, saying, Swear hereon that thou wilt never look at another than myself, nor incline thy body or thy heart to him. I swore readily enough to this, and he joyed with exceeding joy, and embraced me round the neck, while love for him possessed my whole heart. Then we set the table before us, and we ate and we drank till we were satisfied. But I was dying for the coming of the night. And when night did come, he led me to the bride chamber, and slept with me on the bed, and continued to kiss and embrace me till the morning. Such a night I had never seen in my dreams. I lived with him in a life of happiness and delight for a full month, at the end of which I asked his leave to go on foot to the bazaar and buy me certain special stuffs, and he gave me permission. So I donned my mantilla, and taking with me the old woman and slave girl, I went to the khan of the silk mercers, where I seated myself in the shop front of a young merchant, whom the old woman recommended, saying to me, This youth's father died when he was a boy, and left him great store of wealth. He hath by him a mighty fine stock of goods, and thou wilt find what thou seekest with him, for none of the bazaar hath better stuffs than he. Then she said to him, Show this lady the most costly stuffs thou hast by thee. And he replied, Hearkening and obedience. Then she whispered to me, Say a civil word to him. But I replied, I am pledged to address no man save my lord. And she began to sound his praise. I said sharply to her, We want naught of thy sweet speeches. Our wish is to buy of him whatsoever we need and return home. So he brought me all I sought, and I offered him his money, but he refused to take it, saying, Let it be a gift offered to my guest this day. Then quoth I to the old woman, If he will not take the money, give him back his stuff. By Allah, cried he, not a thing will I take from thee. I sell it not for gold or for silver, but I give it all as a gift for a single kiss, a kiss more precious to me than everything the shop containeth. Asked the old woman, What will the kiss profit thee? And turning to me, whispered, O my daughter, thou hearest what this young fellow saith. What harm will it do if he get a kiss from thee, and thou gettest what thou seekest at that price? Replied I take refuge with Allah from such action. Knowest thou not that I am bound by an oath? But she answered, Now whist, just let him kiss thee, and neither speak to him nor lean over him, so shalt thou keep thine oath and thy silver, and no harm whatever shall befall thee. And she ceased not to persuade me and importune me, and made light of the matter till evil entered into my mind, and I put my head in the poke, and declaring I would ne'er consent, consented. So I veiled my eyes and held up the edge of my mantilla between me and the people passing, and he put his mouth to my cheek under the veil. But while kissing me, he bit me so hard a bite that he tore the flesh from my cheek, and blood flowed fast, and faintness came over me. The old woman caught me in her arms, and when I came to myself, I found the shop shut up, and her sorrowing over me and saying, "Thank Allah for the averting which might have been worse." Then she said to me, "Come, take heart. Let us go home before the matter become public and thou be dishonored. And when thou art safe inside the house, feign sickness, and lie down and cover thyself up, and I will bring thee powders and plasters to cure thy bite. Withal, and thy wound will be healed in the latest in 3 days." So after a while, I rose, and I was in extreme distress and terror. It came full on me, but I went on little by little. I reached the house when I pleaded illness and lay me down. When it was night, my husband came in to me and said, "What hath befallen thee, O my darling? Is this excursion of thine?" And I replied, "I am not well. My head acheth badly." And then he lit a candle and drew near to me and looked hard at me and asked, "What is this wound I see on thy cheek, and in the tenderest part too?" And I answered, "When I went in today with thy leave to buy stuffs, a camel laden with firewood jostled me, and one of the pieces tore my veil and wounded my cheek, as thou seest. For indeed the ways of this city are strait." "Tomorrow," cried he, "I will go complain to the governor. So shall he give it every fuel seller in Baghdad." "Allah upon thee," said I, "burden not thy soul with such sin against any man." The fact is, I was riding on an ass, and it stumbled, throwing me to the ground, and my cheek lightly upon a stick or a bit of glass, and got this wound. Then said he, "Tomorrow I will go up to the Jafar, the Barmaki, and tell him the story, so he shall kill every donkey boy in Baghdad." "Wouldst thou destroy all these men because of my wound?" said I, "when this which befell me was by decree of Allah and his destiny." But he answered, "There is no help for it," and springing to his feet, plied me with words, and pressed me till I was perplexed and frightened, and I stuttered and I stammered, and my speech waxed thick, and I said, "This is a mere accident by decree of Allah." Then, O Commander of the Faithful, he guessed my case and said, "Thou hast been false to thine oath." He at once cried out with a loud cry, whereupon a door opened, and in came 7 black slaves, who he commanded to drag me from my bed and throw me down in the middle of the room. Furthermore, he ordered one of them to pinion my elbows and squat upon my head, and a second to sit upon my knees and secure my feet. And drawing his sword, he gave it to a third and said, "Strike her, O Sa'ad, and cut her in twain, and let each one take and cast it into the Tigris, that the fish may eat her. For such is the retribution due to those who violate their vows and are unfaithful to their love." And he redoubled in wrath. Then he repeated to the slave, "Smite her, O Sa'ad." And when the slave who was sitting upon me made sure of the command, he bent down to me and he said, "O my mistress, repeat the profession of faith, and bethink thee if there be anything thou wouldst have done, for verily this is the last hour of thy life." "O good slave," said I, "wait but a little while, and get off my head, that I may charge thee with my last injunctions." Then I raised my head, and I saw the state I was in, how I had fallen from high degree into a lowest disgrace, and into death after life, and such life, and how I had brought my punishment on myself by my own sin. Whereupon the tears streamed from my eyes, and I wept with exceeding weeping. Then he looked on me with eyes of wrath, and began repeating, "Tell her who turneth from our love to work it injury sore, and taketh her a fine new love, the old love tossing o'er. We cry enough o'er thee, ere thou enough of us shalt cry. What passed between us doth suffice, and happily something more." When I heard this, O Commander of the Faithful, I wept, And I looked at him and began repeating these couplets. To severance you tomb my love, and all unmoved remain my tears sore lids with sleepless make the sleep while I complain. You make firm friendship reign between mine eyes and infamy, yet can my heart forget you not, nor eyes can I restrain. You made me swear with many an oath my troth to hold for aye, but when you reigned my bosom's lord, you wrought me traitor bane. I loved you like a silly child who wots not what is love. Then spare the learner, let her not be the master slain. By Allah's name, I pray you write when I am dead and gone upon my tomb, this died of love whose senses love had ta'en. Then haply one shall pass that way who fire of love hath felt, and treading on a lover's heart with ruth and woe shall melt. When I ended my verses, tears came again, but the poetry and the weeping only added fury to his fury. And when he ceased reciting at me, I wept again, and I prayed for his pardon. And I humbled myself before him and spoke him softly, saying to myself, I will work on him with words. So happily he will refrain from slaying me, and even though he take all I have. So I complained of my sufferings. And when I ended, I wept again. And he looked at me and reviled me in an abusive language. Thou wast all taken up with love of other men, not me. 'Twas thine to show me severance face, 'twas only mine to see. I'll leave thee, for that first thou wast of me to take thy leave, and patient bear that parting blow that bore so patiently. E'en as thou soughtest other love, so other love I'll seek, and make the crime of murdering love thine own atrocity. When he had ended these verses, he cried out to the slave, Cut her in half, and free us from her, for we have no profit of her. So the slave drew near me, O Commander of the Faithful, and I ceased bandying verses, and made sure of death and despairing of life, committed my affairs to Almighty Allah. And behold, the old woman rushed in and threw herself at my husband's feet, and kissed them, and wept, and said, O my son, by the rights of my fosterage, and by my long service to thee, I conjure thee pardon this young lady, for indeed she hath done nothing deserving such doom. Thou art a very young man, and I fear lest her death be laid at thy door, for it is said, Whoso slayeth shall be slain. As for this wanton, drive her out thy doors, from thy love and from thy heart. And she ceased not to weep, and importuned him till he relented and said, I pardon her. But needs must I set her a mark which shall show upon her all her life. Then he bade the slaves drag me along the ground and lay me out at full length, after stripping me of all my clothes. And when the slaves had so sat upon me that I could not move, he fetched in a rod of quince tree and came down with it upon my body, and continued beating me on the back and the sides till I lost consciousness from excess of pain, and I despaired of my life. Then he commanded the slaves to take me away as soon as it was dark, together with the old woman, to show them the way, and throw me upon the floor of the house wherein I dwelt before my marriage. They did their lord's bidding, and cast me down in my old home, and went their ways. I did not revive from my swoon till dawn appeared, when I applied myself to the dressing of my wounds with ointments and medications, and I medicined myself, but my sides and ribs still showed signs of the rod, as thou hast seen. I lay in weekly case and confined to my bed for 4 months before I was able to rise and health returned to me. At the end of that time, I went to the house where all this had happened and found it in ruin. The street had been pulled down and long, and rubbish heaps rose where the building erst was. But could I learn how this had come about? Then I betook myself to this my sister on my father's side, and found with her these two black bitches. I saluted her and told her what had betided me and the whole of my story, and she said, O my sister, who is safe from the despite of time and secure, thanks be to Allah who hath brought thee off safely. And she began to say, Such is the world, so bear a patient heart when riches leave thee and when friends depart. Then she told me her own story and what had happened to her with her two sisters and how matters had ended. So we abode together, and the subject of marriage was never on our tongues for all these years. After a while, we were joined by our other sister, the procuratrix, who goeth out every morning and buyeth all we require for the day and night, and we continue in such condition till this last night. In the morning, our sister went out as usual to make her market, and then befell us what befell from bringing the porter into the house and admitting these three calendar men. We entreated them kindly and honorably, and a quarter of the night had not passed ere three grave and respectable merchants from Mosul joined us and told us of their adventures. We sat talking with them, but on one condition which they violated, whereupon we treated them as sordid with their breach of promise, and made them repeat the account they had given of themselves. They did our bidding, we forgave their offense, and so they departed from us. And this morning we were unexpectedly summoned to thy presence. And such is our story. The caliph wondered at her words, and bade the tale to be recorded and chronicled, and laid up in his muniment chambers. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of day, and ceased saying her permitted say. And so I leave you until the morrow.